Good evening, my dear students. Yesterday we stopped the topic at submarkets. Regular banking operations we have seen. We were discussing about submarkets. Submarkets are not the regular transactions of banks, but however they do come under financial operations conducted by banks as well as coordinated by the banks. In the submarket, yesterday I told you the subdivisions of submarkets are: first is call money, then bill market, certificate of deposits, commercial papers. Again, in bill market, there are two subheadings: commercial bills, T-bills. T-bill is treasury bill. Well, what is the call market? Call money market is asking the money supply in a short notice. This happens between two banks, Bank 1 and Bank 2. Suppose Bank 1 is in shortage of cash for their transactions. Suppose getting money from the RBI, asking RBI, getting money from RBI, it all takes time. It will not happen in a single day. So when you are short of a physical supply of cash to deal with your transactions, any bank wants cash temporarily. They ask another bank. It's kind of a loaning. Loan with very marginal, minimal interest rate. Suppose 100 rupees you are taking today, at the time of returning, it will be 101 or 102. That is the very low interest rate applies. Well, that is the call market. Calling for money in a short notice is call money market. In that, I told you it is between two banks. When transaction is starting and ending in single day, that is called call market. You are asking a bank gives you money, and then this second bank, which has borrowed bank from Bank 2, repays the money by end of the day. That is transaction, total transaction starts and ends on the same day. That is called call market. Then there is another thing called short notice market. In the same thing, same kind of transaction between two banks, short notice transaction also occurs, but here the duration of payment is maximum 14 days. Call market is transactions for 1 day. Short notice market is duration of repayment is 14 days. That is the difference. We move to bill market. Bill market, banks, when they want to collect money from the individuals or institutions, deposit purpose, not for long-term purpose, not even 1 year. It is a short notice. They want to collect money for their transactions. That is called a bill market. A bank can collect short-term funds from the institutions and people, and it can repay it to them when bond is issued by the bank. People will buy it. The maturity time is 90 days only. Maximum time the amount has to be repaid to the people is 90 days. This is called bill market. This is called bill market. In the bills, I told you two kinds of bills. Here, the bill is raised, and then bill is bought, purchased, and then bill is settled. Three things are involved. Bill has to be raised in the sense it is a kind of a promise that it requires this much amount of money, that is the bill. Somebody buys it. So let's say they are raising a bill for 100. Here, the two kinds of bill I told you. Treasury bills are related to government, either state government or central government transactions. Bank and government transactions are treasury bills. That's why you see, even in household also, any government employee, particularly state government, their salaries and everything has to come to through treasury. The bill is raised by the government and then now it will be sent to treasury. It borrows the amount of bills, collected amount of the bills will be drawn from RBI. RBI pays the bills against the bills raised by the government. Before 90 days, whatever money is borrowed by the government towards payment of treasury bills has to be settled by the concerned government within 90 days. That is T-bill. Here, 90 days is the time short-term funds. Bank has to collect amount. That is the bill market. That is the bill market, commercial bill market. It can raise, an industry can raise bills. Industry can raise a bill stating that no, this much money is required. They can collect money from individuals. They can collect money from the people, from the corporates. But the payment period is 90 days. These bills, because some kind of a guarantee is there for the bills, there is a definite repayment period, and then there is a guarantee by that repayment period, the bill will be repaid. Bank will also purchase that bill, and then no, the person who raised the bill will again settle the amount with the bank. Treasury bills, interesting point is treasury bills, there is zero interest on the treasury bills. If government is raising a bill and RBI is advancing the money to pay the bill raised by the government will pay at par to the RBI, but it will not pay any interest. Earlier, this is called, earlier in T-bill, there are two kinds of T-bills were there as per the original criteria. There are ad hoc T-bills, and then there is a ways and means account. Ad hoc T-bills were 91-92 ad hoc T-bills. No, the procedure was waived off. Ad hoc T-bills payment period was 91 days. That means the central government raises bills for payment of various means. For that, RBI will advance amount to central government bills, central government raised bills. Amount will be settled for various accounts. The obligation of central government has to repay the amount given by the RBI. It should be repaid in 91 days time. That was earlier called ad hoc payments. Why ad hoc? Ad hoc means temporary. It's not a permanent solution. Subsequently, what happened? Every day, though 91 days is the time limit, every now and then government used to release bills for which all round the year RBI used to pay. To avoid this procedure, the very name of ad hoc T-bills, the division itself is abolished. Now it is called ways and means account. Ways and means account is nothing but in the yearly budget, there will be allocation of money to various heads. Under the head, if government is releasing an amount, is raising a bill against payment to somebody, suppose there is a contractor. You need to know, pay money to the contractor. Government raises bill on the name of the contractor, sends to treasury, and treasury has to settle the bill to the contractor. In that case, RBI has to release money to the treasury. Through treasury, bill is settled. This is seen against what is the budget allocation for that head during the year. And every time you can send any amount of bills. There is no time limit. Every day also you can send the bill. Whenever you want to settle a particular amount within the budget allocation, you can raise a bill anytime. That's how the ad hoc budget, ad hoc T-bill, the procedure was taken out. In the place of an ad hoc T-bill, a new head called Ways and Means account has come into effect. You will see when you are reading the news related to any government, sometimes you will find news now related to expenditure. This much amount, this 300 crores is taken from Ways and Means head. Ways and Means is nothing but your original budget allocation, and then your payments related to original allocation. The allocation should be the bills raised for that particular head have to be very much well under the allocation shown in the budget. If it is crossing the budget, again, it has to go to the assembly in case of state, it has to go to parliament in case of center, and they have to take approval again through a bill, and then it becomes regular. Regular T-bills are again, these to meet the expenses, clearances as per the policies. Here there are time limits. The bill payment, there are time limits. There are some payments at 14 days, some at 182 days. Some payment period is 361 days. Three kinds of bill payments are there under regular T-bills. Well, this is about the spending the money. How to attract money from the public, and what are the procedures, what are the various methods available to either banks or financial institutions. I am going into those details. First thing is dated government securities. This is a government issued bonds with a maturity date, and it's a long-term deposit. I told you till now, everything I was talking about 1 day, 14 days, and then 90 days. Subsequently, I went up to 1 year. Those are all called short-term operations. Now, a long-term deposit, when government is attracting deposits from the public and institutions for long-term purposes, wherein government gives the security, it will also have a definite repayment date. I told you it's a long-term security. It sells, government sells dated securities to markets to raise money. Meaning here, it can be for 5 years, it can be for 10 years, 20 years, up to 30 years. These security bonds, any government can sell in order to attract money from the markets. Here, whoever is giving higher interest, higher amount, interest rates will be, interest rates may also vary. These security bonds, government released security bonds, long-term bonds, will not have same security, same interest rates. It can vary. Government can change the rates. The second method of collecting money from the public or from the market is certificate of deposits. Here, banks will collect this amount. The first thing, dated government security bonds, government is collecting money in terms of security bonds. Now here, certificate of deposit is done by the commercial banks and financial institutions for generating additional funds. People will deposit normal 1 year fixed deposits, all those schemes will be there with the bank. In addition to that, when they want large amounts are to be attracted from the public for the business interest of the bank, what they do, banks they release certificate of deposits. Certificate of deposits will be issued in multiples of 25 lakhs. That means any certificate of deposit, whoever wants to buy the certificate of deposits released by the bank, minimum investment is 25 lakhs. Maximum investment is 1 crore. But all the time the investment is in multiples of 25 lakhs. That means 25 lakhs, 50 lakhs, 75 lakhs, 1 crore. Maturity period can be 3 months to 1 year. In maturity time can be 3 months to 1 year in respect of banks, 1 year to 3 years in respect of financial institutions other than banks. Financial institution, recognized financial institution is attracting money from the market. They can also release certificate of deposits, but the maturity period is 1 year to 3 years. When banking is taking money through release of certificate of deposits, the repayment period is 3 months to 1 year. The fourth category is commercial papers. Commercial papers started in 1990. Commercial papers are issued by corporates. First, dated government securities by the governments, certificate of deposits by the banks. Commercial papers are by the corporates. At denomination of 5 lakhs or multiples of 5 lakhs to a minimum of 1 crore. Maturity 3 months to 6 months. Here, when corporate is raising funds from the public or from the market, the maturity period is only either 3 to 6 months. Their minimum amount one has to invest in a commercial paper is 1 crore. But the issue is in terms of 5 lakhs, multiples of 5 lakhs. Suppose you are you are taking 1 crore worth commercial papers from a corporate. Then, because it is in the multiples of 5 lakhs, 20 commercial papers are bought by anybody, that amounts to 1 crore. Here the repayment period is 3 to 6 months. You clearly understand, because this has come as a question in a statement form in 2020. It has come in this fashion. They have stated what is a short-term one, what is a long-term one. All you need to know to answer this question properly is what is a short-term deposit and who is entitled to raise the deposit. Government is raising, short or long. Bank is raising deposit, it's a short-term or long-term. Commercial institutions or financial institutions are again now drawing deposit, short-term or long time. Corporates are drawing short-term or long time. If you are clear about these two aspects in respect of 4 combinations, you will easily understand that. Till now, initially, when starting the monetary sector, money sector, organized, unorganized, 2 subheadings we have seen. Till now, that means now till submarkets, entire thing in the organized sector, we have dealt with the issues. I am going to the unorganized sector. Unorganized sector of money market. Organized sector, banks, commercial institutions, various kinds of banks, cooperative sector, how to raise the money, how to spend the money, all these things now we have discussed at length. Now I am talking about the unorganized sector. Unorganized sector is nothing but RBI doesn't have a control on this. These unorganized sector, these operations, so whoever doing commercial operations in unorganized sector, they are not bound by any restrictions of RBI. any rules of RBI. In very limited cases, state government can frame certain rules as to the function of the unorganized sector of money operation. Who comes under unorganized sector? Money lenders. Money lenders, you cannot fix an interest rate to money lenders. It can be 1 rupee, it can be 12%, it can be 10%, it can be 100%, depending upon the requirement of the borrower and then capacity of the lender. So money lenders generally they are very prevalent in the village level. For agricultural operations, the farmers used to take money from the money lender at exorbitant interest. This was one of the things which was the one of the important points to curtail the money lenders operation and harassment of the money lenders of the farmers. Nationalization of banks was planned originally. I will come to nationalization plans and their advantages a little later. So money lenders, no proper account maintenance. They are not registered and not regulated by RBI. No proper account maintenance. Money lender. There are two types of unorganized sector. One is money lenders. Other is merchant cum money lender. Money lender, anybody can borrow amount from the lender. Interest rate, it's only between them two. There is no organized control. There is no book maintenance. What is the second thing? Like merchant cum money lender. This is simple. He is also a money lender. At the same time, he is a merchant. In the sense, you are giving it to a farmer. There will be an obligation between the lender and borrower, stating that after the crop, the entire produce have to be sold to the money lender only at a lesser price than the market. This is the kind of an agreement a merchant cum money lender enters into with an agriculturist. So these two are operational. Next, we go to the banking schemes. What are various banking schemes operated various methods? Banking schemes, every district, you will find a particular bank becomes a lead bank. There are many banks. There will be many banks. There will be SBI, there will be Andhra Bank, there will be some other bank. Many banks will be operational in the district at various places. So for the district, for easy operation's sake, one bank is nominated as the lead bank. This lead bank will look after it acts as a leader to other banks. It also supervises the actions of government policy. Suppose a particular operation is to be lent by all banks in the district. Such kind of a directive comes from the bank, comes from the government. The lead bank takes the role of ensuring this is happening in respect of all banks. All banks are following same principle. This is called a lead bank. Lead bank scheme is one thing. Then they ensure, this also ensures, a lead bank ensures same person is not taking loans from all banks at the same time. This will be ensured because data is maintained by the lead bank. Whoever is applying for a loan, it has to go to the lead bank. Lead bank maintains the records. So you are applying similar kind of a loan to 5-6 banks. Automatically data is there at the lead bank. It guides the particular bank. No, he has already taken loan from some other bank. Don't give it to him. This is the advantage. Then there is service area approach. This another kind of a banking scheme. The service area, semi-urban areas, rural banks sees that reach of money is there to the priority sectors. At the same time, number of customers, the attitude of banking will be promoted by the service area approach. The banks established in the rural area and then needy areas, basically they are for a specific purpose, service oriented. That means they ensure that everybody gets the signal that how banking is very important. Everybody has to open an account and transact through a bank. How it is important, the science will be developed. Then there is another method called differential rate of interest scheme. For all operations, interest is not same. This RBI gives the guidance. For a differential rate of interest scheme is one very crucial scheme, critical scheme you will have to understand, because there is some logic in that. Every bank, public sector banks have to keep aside 1% of their total cash reserves of the previous year for giving loans to affordable classes as per the government directives at a concessional rate of 4%. 100 rupees, 1000 rupees was your last year. The bank's total reserves were 1000 rupees. Out of that 1%, that means now 10 rupees have to be kept aside for giving loans to people at 4% rate. Whom this loan is to be given? Basically, this should be for SC/ST. It is out of this total 1% of loan, 40% of that 1%, that means now 40% of the loan is to be given to SC/STs only at 4%. Remaining as per the directives of the government. That's why you need to know what is the differential rate of interest scheme. A question can be asked on this, because this is totally the very principle itself is totally different. Unless you know it very clearly, you won't make a mistake. Another thing is a social banking scheme. In this, financing will have to happen only to the poverty reduction programs and employment generating programs. Self-employment or no, a small scale industry, micro industry for some employment generation. At the same time, for various poverty improvement programs, poverty reduction programs, money can be advanced. That is social banking scheme. Because the schemes have got a social relevance, the banking scheme is called a social banking scheme. Next is priority sector lending. Priority sector lending means for each sector, you adopt a different interest rate. This contributes to national income, but they can get loan credit from banking sector. List of priority sectors, they will be decided by RBI. In respect of each area, priority sector differs. And generally, 18% of the total loan allocation, out of the total amount, 18% loan has to go to the agriculture, 10% is to go to the weaker sections, 8% has to small farmers, 7% for medium enterprises. These are the allocation. I am not talking about the interest rates. I am talking about the allocation. You have 100 rupees, 18 rupees loan you have to give it to agriculture sector. Likewise, that is the fund allocation. Regional rural banks have to give 60% of the total amount to priority sector. And what happens to the foreign banks? Scheduled foreign banks, what happens? The foreign banks have also got an obligation to give loan to borrowers. But this will be given for import-export operations. In their budget, 32% of the loan has to be given to import-export sector if you have borrowing. Special exclusive banking schemes are National Housing Scheme, that is national housing exclusively for housing. You give a particular bank is there, it gives totally for housing projects only. There is another agency called SIDBI, Small Scale Industries Development Bank. Small Scale Industries Development Bank will give loans only for establishment of small scale industries. Those are exclusive schemes. They give advances to only the specified purpose. not for general purposes. All banks can give for loans to various other sectors, including consumer loans, and then now housing they can give, and then small scale they can give. But this housing development bank, they cannot give it to any other purpose. Small scale industries development bank, they cannot give any other purposes. That is the difference. With this, organized and unorganized sector, we have completed the monetary policy, money policy. Now I am going to the national banks. I already told you how nationalization occurred in 3 installments, and then no total banks are currently, we have about 20. All those things we discussed in previous class. But what are the objectives of nationalized banks? It is for breaking the ownership of banking monopoly in the hands of some and protect concentration of wealth. This is when people were handling the money, and the money banks were there in the control of private people. What happened? Entire wealth is concentrated with them only. They have a hold on the money market. That's how to prevent monopoly, and then now to prevent concentration of wealth, nationalization was planned. Other objective was to develop socio-economic planning. Then banking services to rural sectors, that was one of the part, government has interest. When government has a bank and government decides to open a bank in a rural sector, they can. If it's in a private hands, they see profitability. If it's profitable in that area, they open, otherwise not. Then they want to enter into, they cater to the poverty, and then the priority sector loaning, government want to improve. Then mobilization of savings. If banks are established all over the country, even in a small village also, the deposits can be improved so that mobilization of savings can happen all over the country. These were the major objectives government had in mind while nationalizing the banks. Then I will talk about NPS. NPS is non-productive assets. It is a loan or an advance for which principal and interest remained overdue for 90 days is called an NPA. They give some amount of loan to somebody, some interest accrue. EMI is to be paid by him. That means monthly equated monthly amounts he need to pay, but he will not pay it for 3 months consecutively. That means the principal as well as an interest is stalled with him for 90 days, the 3 installments. When it crosses 3 installments, in banking terminology, that particular asset is considered as a non-productive asset, NPA. Then in non-productive asset, the term differs when it becomes a substandard asset, when it goes up to 1 year. Beyond 1 year, if this amount is overdue from the borrower, it is termed as doubtful asset. Then loss asset after that, the final category of NPA is loss asset, uncollectible. If God feels it is long standing, overdue, all legal matters, everything, you feel it's uncollectible, it becomes a loss asset. In case of Malia, in case of Mehul Choksi, and then Nirav Modi, thousands of crores is overdue. These are all NPAs. But until you collect the amount by way of something, either mortgaging either auctioning the properties, confiscated, unless the money is recovered, till that time it becomes only a loss asset. The loss asset in the balance sheet of the bank, it should be shown as a loss. That means even if they are getting a profit on a yearly transaction, because of this one particular asset, it can be considered as a loss asset. So there are various 7-8 steps, 8 measures government has suggested to handle the NPAs. That means when it becomes an asset, has become NPA. How to collect it? What are the various methods available to the banks to collect the non-productive asset? That means now the outstanding loans from the borrowers. These 7 I will have to go in one go. It takes 15-20 minutes. That's why I'm stopping it here, facilitating now for the your time will also be over at the same time. Madam will also start her class. Meanwhile,
Sir,
from yesterday's class and today's class, if you have any doubts, please speak on.
sir, is that non-performing